Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
FA Cup quarterfinals are done, and it does feel like after a long period of nothing, the deadline is tomorrow, mate.
Yeah.
I do think the one thing coming out of the international breaks normally, like, okay, international break's done. We've got a week now till the weekend. Nope, is tomorrow. And I went from feeling chill to, oh shit, it's pretty damn soon. I better make my decisions and figure out what I'm going to do pretty quickly. So, yes, we now have more information, probably mostly information that people didn't want because it hasn't really fallen particularly helpful for people with a lot of chips. And
Not
off
sure,
we
not
go.
sure.
Yeah. Again, it's very dependent, right? Because of overlap of different chips and things like that. So I already made my transfer yesterday. I decided to just get it done. Selling Chris Wood for Marmoush after seeing Haaland injured and no sign of Chris Wood and no real indication that he'll be back soon. So just got that done and out
How
the way.
lucky are you that you free hitted in 29 and now Haaland's injured? I can't
Right.
believe your luck,
Is that
mate.
it? Is that this whole game's luck now, is it? Is that it? How lucky are you that you decided not to buy Erling Haaland at the beginning of the season after his double hat tricks and then he went on to do fuck all? How lucky were you?
Yeah. How lucky am I that I accidentally took a
Listen,
minus 56?
yeah. It was
Um,
all luck. And if you had never done that, no.
no, Suj, all skill, mate. All
Uh,
skill.
uh, uh.
Yeah, it does feel like we've gone from me kind of saying for 2 weeks, like, okay, guys, we can talk about this, but please kind of take a break because the chances are that the FA Cup quarterfinals is going to change what you want to do. And I suspect for many of people that's now the case. And yet now you're quite right. It's like the FA Cup quarterfinals are done. And that's like overload of what happens this week. There's going to be so many wildcards activated this week across planning for game week 30 and game week 31. Obviously, this is Chips and the Assmen Volume 4. I don't anticipate a Volume 5. We're going to be covering off, obviously, on this a lot to do with chips. But I just want to start, if we can, Suj, with a few updates from the actual Cup games at the weekend. We're not going to review these in the detail that we do on the Game Review podcast. But I think there's a few things out of it that are worth noting because there's a lot of valuable assets that played at the weekend. So from Fulham Palace, I think with Fulham losing and them now not
Handsomely
doubling,
as well.
well, by 3 goals to nil, yes, absolutely, and not the first time Palace have won to nil at Craven Cottage. I think I want to say they're now 6 away wins in a row in all comps without conceding a goal. Palace,
Wow.
which is quite remarkable. They have some dirty away games still to come. Yeah, but unless you're on sort of like a free hit 33 strategy, I think Fulham assets have become binnable. And I only say that in the sense you might have a cheap enabler that's going to be good for you in 34. But if you're looking at the likes of Anthony Robinson, I think there's every reason to consider moving that on at this stage. Palace, the majority of their team, I think, is pretty viable to pick up in
Yep.
FPL. You mentioned about buying Marmoush for Wood, and we're very honest, Suj, that's highly likely going to be my move this week as well. But Marmoush going into the weekend was pretty much the only player that would have been under consideration for me that wasn't a Crystal Palace player. So I think Henderson, Munoz, Lacroix and Richards for more enabling prices. Eze, Sarr, Mateta, they are all viable pickups.
It was Marmoush or Mateta. And the thing is, with Isak and Evan Nielsen, my other strikers, Evan Nielsen with Ipswich, I couldn't really move them. But if Evan Nielsen to Mateta will happen next week. If I hadn't, for me, it's Evan Nielsen to Mateta is like 90% on the cards next week. I already own Munoz. So then I have to make a decision around Arsman versus the third Crystal Palace asset, which we will talk about later. So yeah, I totally get that. We just need to figure out now what I'm also doing with Newcastle assets. I think the one thing to think about with Glasner is that he doesn't, to get him in, doesn't cost you a transfer. So depending on if people have got fewer transfers and are thinking about taking hits to get a third Palace or what have you, and you've still got Arsman, maybe that sways it a little bit, and do need to think about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing to say, and we're going to talk Glasner and the possibility of using the arse man on him, does the fact that there's so many good Palace assets take away from him?
And as you mentioned, right, it's difficult fixtures, but then that's part of the appeal of table bonus.
Yeah.
We'll talk about our teams, but I've got a bench boost left, and I've got an Assmen left, and there's two doubles which we know about where I could. Glasner has probably got double double versus bench boost in 33. I'm not sure. The, where do you sit on that fence of they've won 6 games away from home without conceding, therefore they're very good, therefore it doesn't matter that they've got tough away fixtures coming, versus the run's got to end sometime.
Well,
So
it will end.
it really
There's no
is.
doubt about it. I
Yeah.
mean, they've still got to go to Newcastle City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Tottenham. Obviously, it's Southampton away this week. You could very conceivably see them winning to 0 again on
Mm.
Wednesday night, couldn't you?
Yep.
You watched Brighton and Forest, didn't you?
First half, I did. Yeah.
I watched all of it. It was the only game I managed to catch in its entirety at the weekend, and I think as per usual, I picked up the wrong one. Unfortunately, this was more down to timing. The reason that I watched this one. Cut the notes on Brighton. Obviously, they don't appeal so much now. Obviously did have them projected to double in 33 if they'd won. They haven't, but they do still have a good fixture in 32. And the fixture in 34 is not bad. It's Leicester 32, it's West Ham 34. So I feel like enabling ones might still be quite useful. So I give you a couple of notes on this. So Jorginho Rutter, we saw obviously come off injured and was in a protective boot on the side of the pitch when the penalty shootout was happening. That doesn't mean he's definitively injured, but it's a good chance he'll miss this week. So I think for João Pedro owners, considering he didn't start as well, you're probably quite safe for Villa on Wednesday night. And Adam Webster would have come off towards the end of the 90 minutes, managed to get through to extra time, but he was done. And I think he had an hamstring pull, quite similar to what happened to Kevin Danso in the Tottenham Bournemouth game. So Lewis Dunk is like 4.2, and he might be one where
Wow, he's really dropped off.
he might be one who comes right back in. And if people are wildcard and think, I want to bench boost 32, well, to have that as your enabler and it's got Leicester at home in 32, there's an element of risk in that. But let's see what maybe Fabian Hertzler says about that tomorrow. Also, a real note for Yankuba Minter owners. And I know he's been quite popular over this break. And a few people had bought him thinking, oh, Brighton are going to double in 33. Well, they're not now. He played 120 minutes and was fatiguing badly. I would actually be surprised at this moment if he started against Aston Villa on Wednesday based on that, because Brighton do have alternative attacking options. I don't think he's a problem moving forward, but I'd be surprised if he started Wednesday night now. For
Yep.
Forest, Nuno obviously gave more than he normally gives away on Friday, saying like, look, he's not going to play at Brighton in terms of Chris Wood. His interview afterwards, without saying it directly, suggested that he was quite concerned. I would be very surprised if Chris Wood started tomorrow night. I think the suggestion at this moment is he may even be doubtful for that semi-final, which is the weekend of 34. I think that's in sell territory. You've already done it. I'm most certainly doing it. Nuno will obviously do his presser today. I don't know if we'll get anything factual, but I think Chris Wood is in the sell category. Morgan Gibbs White owners should also have a little bit of caution. He came off kind of 120th minute, and Nuno said that it was because he had this incident in extra time where he collided with the post, was giving him some issues. I suggest that's probably an impact problem and he'll be fine, but you may want to keep an eye on that as well. And also a note for Nico Williams owners, which I think is actually positive news. He'll be suspended for the FA Cup semi-final. So in terms of being worried about rotation, you
He'll
should be
play the
all
league
right. You
games.
should be all right with him, actually.
Yeah, makes sense. Wood was on the chopping block for me, regardless of whether he was injured or not, just because of the fixtures and the upside on other players. So I was going to highly likely to sell him anyway, and it just reaffirmed that decision for me.
If you want someone to blame for breaking him, I'm here. It's no
Okay,
problem.
nice.
Comfortable win for Villa at Preston by 3-0. Cut the notables from this. Ollie Watkins, obviously available, was used as a substitute towards the end, so we know he's fit. Marcus Rashford took the penalty with Marco Asensio on the pitch, as per what Lee Jackson suggested to us during the international break on Clash of Correspondence. He thought Rashford would probably be on the pens. That's the case. On Villa, one of the real concerns at the moment is the team is pretty much fit and they've got loads of options now.
So many.
I mean, if you're looking now to, which guy's going to play twice for me in 33 with an FA Cup semi-final straight afterwards, and obviously the PSG
Champions League as well.
either side of the Southampton fixture in 32 because I think you're drawn to the Southampton 32 and then probable double 33. I think it's a nightmare.
Mm.
Axel Disasai's cup tied obviously wouldn't have featured at the weekend. You could look at him as maybe an enabler that could play 2 league games, but he might cover it right back. You've got Cash and Garcia, Concer's fit, Mings is fit, Pau Torres was back on the bench this weekend. They've got so many options at the moment. Pretty much the whole squad is fit, bar Ross Barkley, and he's really close as well. So Villa players feels like a little bit of a minefield. Big win for Manchester City. Full 90 minutes for Semenyo and Kluivert. Does make them a little bit of a concern for Wednesday night against Ipswich. I think Semenyo will definitely play. Kluivert, you would have a little bit of hesitation about, but will probably play. Erling Haaland left the Vitality Stadium in a protected boot. He got his
I heard crutches somewhere as well, but
yeah,
no,
crutches
as well. Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
We've seen players leave football stadiums before in protective boots and
just
then play.
Just for safety. Yeah.
I remember a case with Dominic Solanke, certainly last season, when he was still at Bournemouth, where he left the stadium in a protective boot and he played like 3 or 4 days later. So it's a common occurrence now where these players wear these boots for protection. But I want to point you in the direction of a tweet from an accountant. This is Physio Scout, at Physio Scout on Twitter. Really good in terms of analysing injuries and what the potential impact is. I just want to read this out because I think it's quite important. Erling Haaland had to be substituted off in the second half of Man City's clash with Bournemouth with an ankle injury. From the limited video, it looks like there was forced eversion, foot twists out, after contact from the outside of the lower leg. This brings concern for a medial high ankle sprain. Can also be known as syndesmosis injury. So do you remember when metatarsal became a thing?
Yep.
Syndesmosis might be the new one.
I don't think so.
No, me neither. He struggled to put weight on his left leg after the challenge and was seen on crutches moon boot after the game. Scans will need to clear a fracture too. There is a chance it's only an axial ankle injury as opposed to forced eversion, which would mean less than a week or two's recovery. However, crutches usage would suggest otherwise. Potential recovery time, if axial injury, less than 2 weeks. A moderate grade syndesmosis, 3 to 4 weeks. High grade syndesmosis could be 8 to 10 weeks with surgery. Best thing is to wait for Pep's comments. Scan will be needed to determine severity, but I would say he is out of Manchester City's clash versus Leicester. When he says, or she, I think it's a he though, that's their words, not mine. But I think we can probably assume that Haaland is out of Wednesday night against Leicester. And I would say on that prognosis, very unlikely to play the Manchester derby on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I want to take all of that with a pinch of salt just because you need the scans and all the stuff that goes with it.
I get it. This guy is really good in terms of his accuracy on looking at what happens to players.
I have no experience. I take your word on it. I also think as well, because Haaland scored, we can easily forget he was pretty shit in the first half and he missed that penalty. Was awful. That was an awful penalty.
I don't think his pens are great because he always goes low left or right. So if the keeper goes the right way.
It was too easy for the keeper to save, Kepa. So, yeah, regardless, I might have gone Marmoush anyway because for a lot of people going Haaland, you need to break the structure of your team. You're selling a Palmer or you're selling a Salah, God forbid. You might be lucky and you can get rid of Trent in your team and free up the money that way. But going Marmoush also means that I don't have to sell Palmer and break the structure of my team. So Haaland, it's a help for a lot of people. Of course, all the people that went early. It's unfortunate. That's the game, right? Sometimes you get injuries.
The consequence, quite obviously, is that Marmoush is going to be so popular. I think
and also the fact that he came on and scored as well, and his shooting boots, he's got them at the moment. He's returning regularly.
You and I were looking at him anyway, so yeah, I'm just going to wait for tonight to get out of the way. If he looks like he's going to go up in price tonight, I'll probably do it tonight, to be honest. Because
I mean, he was nowhere near yesterday.
And he didn't start yesterday as well either, right? So
yeah. Where did I hear it mentioned? But I mean, obviously Ramadan ended yesterday, so now and it was a late in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas now he's going to be fully fueled up and ready to go for is it Thursday they play it, isn't it? I think. Wednesday. So are we ready to go? I think that could be a good one. So Marmoush for me, I think is a captaincy consideration if we know Haaland's out.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely people going to captain Marmoush this week over Salah. that's up to people to make that decision. But yeah, there'll be some popularity in that. You're attacking Leicester. I'm not going to tell
Yeah,
anyone not
exactly
to do
that.
it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Interesting line from Pep after the game as well, because Nico Riley came on for Kusanov, who I think had long travels with Uzbekistan. They're going to be in the World Cup, by the way, Uzbekistan. Pep said Nico O'Reilly, who came on and played left back, which pushed Vardio into centre back, would play the FA Cup semi-final against Nottingham Forest. He said he will play. He made that clear. He's like, that's going to be a reward for him. He's going to play the semi-final. Touch wood for the kid. He doesn't get injured between now and then and gets to
Yep.
have that day at Wembley. But I wouldn't read into that, oh, Nico O'Reilly's now playing left back for Man City and it's necessarily bad for Vardio. Actually, City's setup yesterday was quite intense to push Vardio and Nunes higher up the pitch. So I wouldn't stress that Vardio ended at centre-back yesterday. Could be a very good one for Wednesday night, potentially against Leicester. The FA Cups. Go on, Suj. I can say you were going to say something.
I thought Nunes was a bit ropey in the first. I understand you're coming up against a high intense Semenyo who's in your face all the time. He's not going to get that against Leicester. But all I was praying was that Nunes was so ropey that Rico Lewis will play against Leicester, because I've got him sitting there in my team, and I do think there's a chance Lewis will come back into the team.
There's absolutely a chance Rico Lewis can play against Leicester.
But
I mean,
Nunes is not going to get the same treatment
in theory,
at Leicester that he got against
James
Bournemouth.
McAtee might start against Leicester, right? Pep might rotate quite heavily. And again, when you add that all in, just thinking, well, Marmoush had like half hour on Sundays. He's going to be good to go for Wednesday night, isn't he?
Yeah,
Semi-final lineup is known.
correct.
It's Aston Villa against Crystal Palace and Manchester City versus Nottingham Forest. As a consequence, currently, their respective games in game week 34 are postponed. We will talk about them in more detail. First, in those semi-finals, as per would have been saying on previous podcasts, we don't know yet what day those games will be, but all logic to me would be that Aston Villa will have the Saturday semi-final. That is purely on the basis that it's Champions League quarterfinals first leg, the midweek afterwards. They are not going to wait for what Villa do against Paris Saint-Germain to determine what day. Surely they are not going to put Villa on the Sunday in the FA Cup semi-finals. There's no other confliction.
No, if there's any
for
chance
any
they
other
can
team.
play on the Tuesday, it makes no sense.
No.
Yeah.
They could put it on the Sunday and they could request the UEFA that Villa are on the Wednesday night in the Champions League. Exactly.
City don't have, you just know what you're getting if you put it on the Saturday. It makes absolute logical sense.
None of the other teams are in European competition. Surely Villa Palace is the Saturday. That therefore means Manchester City versus Nottingham Forest is the Sunday. That is important when trying to determine what will happen with the 3 games postponed: City, Villa, Arsenal, Palace, and Forest against Brentford. Let's touch on these and try and get a better understanding of what can happen. Now, first off, we'll say the projections, which many of you can see on FPL Team. And for those on YouTube, we've got it looping around. The fixtures you'll see are based on the current projections at time of recording, which is early on Monday morning on March the 31st. We are projecting currently that City Villa will go into 33. Arsenal Palace will go 33. Forest Brentford stay in 34. We'll explain some of the reasons why, but I think it's worth examining what else can happen. So on City versus Villa, it is a Sky TV game. That's important. We've got the game selected. It was scheduled to be the Monday night in game week 34. The game, importantly, does fit into the Tuesday on game week 33. That's because City play Everton on the Saturday at 3 o'clock at Goodison Park, and Villa Newcastle is the evening kickoff 5:30 on the Saturday. So they can play both of them Saturday, Tuesday, and then they've both got at least 4 days gap till the FA Cup semi-final. It is the only Premier League game that can be played on that Tuesday night, if Sky want to put it there. Can't go into 34 or 35 currently because Villa obviously could have Champions League semi-finals, so it cannot be planned to go into those game weeks. And we have to remember the scenario where, of course, the Villa-Tottenham fixture from game week 37 may have to be forced into the Wednesday night on game week 36, literally the only date it could be played. That's under the eventuality that Aston Villa made the FA Cup final and Tottenham made Europa League semi-finals. It only has to be the semi-finals. So if Villa beat Palace in the FA Cup semi-final, and if Tottenham beat Eintracht Frankfurt before that in the Europa League quarterfinals, Villa and Tottenham is going to be on the Wednesday night in game week 36. There is no other date that it can be played. So you can't at the moment logically plan City v Villa for 36. 37 is possible. That would be a single fixture for the two sides because under that potential logic, most likely that they'd potentially meet each other in the FA Cup final maybe 5 days before and they put it on the Thursday in game week 37. Could it be held back for game week 37 with Sky thinking, well, maybe that's a Champions League playoff match right at the end? They could. But all logic would suggest that the Tuesday in game week 33 should be close to a lock. My confidence in that would be about 90%.
Okay.
They currently cannot plan any other week for City versus Villa other than 37. That would have to be their contingency. I don't know why it won't just be the Tuesday night in game week 33. I can't give you a good reason why not, but 37 is a possibility. Therefore, I don't think we could call it 100%. On Arsenal v Palace, importantly, it is also a game picked up by Sky. It was scheduled to be the 5:30 p.m. kickoff on the Saturday in game week 34, which conveniently for Crystal Palace, they're highly likely to have that same time for their FA Cup semi-final. The game, if it is in game week 33, has to be on the Wednesday. That's because Arsenal play Ipswich on the Sunday beforehand in game week 33. They are not going to make anyone play Sunday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Saturday, or anything like that. So it would have to be the Wednesday night. Because Palace have drawn Villa, and I warned about this, whoever drew Villa, you would have to be a little bit careful here. Because is it right for Palace to play Arsenal away 3 days before an FA Cup semi-final?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, you got to do it. Just got to get up and do it.
Well, again, like with City Villa, obviously Arsenal still in the Champions League, so you cannot plan for game week 34 or 35. And the problem with holding it for game week 36, and you say, oh, it's unfair on Palace having to play Wednesday night in 33 before an FA Cup semi-final. I can tell you now that if Palace made an FA Cup final, they'd have the exact same problem. Because in game week 36, they played Tottenham. Now, if Tottenham have beat Eintracht Frankfurt, guess what? Tottenham v Crystal Palace is going to be on the Sunday. And under that circumstance, Palace would have Sunday, Wednesday, FA Cup final Saturday. That's even worse.
That's only a few weeks later. I'm just looking at game week 33. If they put it on the Wednesday, and you've got Villa City on the Tuesday, then for game week 33, I mean, Sky will be having, say, a wet dream, isn't it? They got 2 games on Saturday. Well, obviously one's on TNT. Then they got Sunday football. Then they got Monday night football. Then they got Tuesday night football, and they got Wednesday night football. 5 days in a row. They're going to be having their best life, mate.
Yep. And I suspect that's probably what it's going to be. But as a consequence, they don't own the coverage to anything else currently that might go into another midweek slot later in the season. Could Sky make a call and go similar? Actually, we want to hold one of these back for later in the season. I can't promise that it won't happen. I'm not as confident that this goes into 33 as City v Villa, purely on the basis that Palace obviously could have to play 3 days before a semi-final. And it doesn't feel quite right, actually. But I ultimately know that if it doesn't, and Palace get to the cup final, they're going to have an even worse scenario. At least in 33, their game against Bournemouth is on the Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've got the disadvantage of playing 3 days after. Villa have the disadvantage of they've got PSG come after, so they've got one eye in the future. Palace got one of the parts. It's one of those things that when you get to this time of the season, unfortunately, you're going to be playing weekend, midweek.
Yeah,
Disadvantage getting to the cup semis. You know, it's going to be one of those things.
there is a scenario, of course, obviously, if Tottenham lose to Eintracht Frankfurt, the Tottenham Crystal Palace game doesn't have to necessarily move to the Sunday in game week 36. You could then have a scenario where it's Saturday and maybe they bring the Wolves fixture forward to the Tuesday if Palace got to the final, said Tuesday, Saturday final, and then maybe played the Arsenal game, say, on the Tuesday or the Thursday in 37. But again, all logic here, guys, and we can only work on this, would be that it's going to go into game week 33. I would conservatively say we're looking at about a 75% chance here. And I think it's possibly it's more than that. It seems highly likely that it's City Villa on the Tuesday, Arsenal Palace on the Wednesday.
Right.
We are currently not projecting Nottingham Forest versus Brentford to go into the midweek of 33. It can. Forest play at Tottenham on the Monday night. That's the Monday night selected game. I've heard a lot of people questioning why the Premier League have allowed it. The Premier League would have had no choice in the matter. The game was chosen by Sky for television coverage on the Monday night. At the time it was chosen, Nottingham Forest didn't have any issues with their fixture schedule. So there's no reason to deny that request from Sky. Sky knew what they were doing. Sky also knew what they were doing when they put Forest on the Monday night again against Crystal Palace in game week 35. I wouldn't be that shocked if Forest choose Leicester, and which is Forest fixture in 36, also for a Monday night. Honestly, I wouldn't be that surprised in a potential attempt to maybe even try and force it as a game at the end, where
Okay.
Forest clinched their Champions League place and Sky go, actually, yeah, we're going to pick Forest and Brentford up right at the end if it kept getting pushed back.
Don't they have to select it now? They can just decide later on that actually
No,
we will now televise this.
we had a scenario. Um, when did Burnley go down? Not last time, but the time before. So this would have been the sugar 21-22 season. I think that's right. Anyway, we had a scenario where there was 3 games on the Thursday in game week 37, and Sky chose which one they wanted, like in the build-up. The games were announced. They didn't choose which one they wanted, and they went, right, we're going to put Villa Burnley on. That's what they
Okay.
decided to do. So if a Forest v Brentford got held right to the end, and you're trying to get exposure for the league, if Sky haven't used all their number of games, they might go, well, yeah, we'll pick up Forest Brentford. What Sky could do, I don't know how many games they've used, and we can't be certain yet because we don't know how many games they'll select for coverage in 36 or 37, but they have a quota of games, 180 per season or something like that. So they could leave themselves where they go, right, so we're going to have 3 games on the final day. Or under that circumstance, they might go, well, actually, the season looks pretty finished.
Yeah, let's
We'll
just
have
do
2
two
on the final
and
day, and then we'll just pick up like a
pick
Forest or
this.
Brent v
Okay.
Brentford instead. That is a possibility. In theory, the game can be played on the Thursday night in game week 33, giving Forest a schedule of Tottenham away on the Monday, Brentford at home on the Thursday, and an FA Cup semi-final on the Sunday.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
It's not logical, is it?
No, that's not going to
If you
happen.
if you're
Not
Forest,
considering they're not in Europe and they've got other weeks that they can switch it around in and stuff. Brentford don't have any other commitments. Yeah, that's not going to happen the Thursday night.
it's not logical. It's not when you don't need to. Forest Brentford have no European commitments or complications. 35 has most likely been blocked again. However, under the circumstance where, say, Sky did put Forest Leicester on the Monday night in 36, it actually opens up 35 again. Because in theory, you could go Monday, Thursday, Monday. That's
Right.
not as bad. That's a schedule Tottenham were actually planning to have a lot towards the end of the 2015-16 season, was playing lots of consecutive Monday night games. Tottenham were scheduled to have 3 in a row. And at the time they were scheduled, Tottenham was still in Europa League. So it could have been Monday, Thursday, Monday, and keep going, rolling for like 3 weeks. We shouldn't rule that as a possibility. So 35 could open back up, but we wouldn't know that unless Forest Leicester got moved till most likely the Monday in game week 36. So if you hold back for the end, you could do that. But obviously, Forest have a game against West Ham scheduled for FA Cup final day. That's got to go somewhere. All logic here currently suggests Forest versus Brentford Wednesday night, game week 34, stays in the current week. And from Forest's perspective, you could, well, that's 3 days after their semi-final. That's absolutely true. But it's a home game. That's a little bit more helpful, so you haven't got the travel involved. And obviously the Palace game's now not till the Monday. So at least after the Brentford, there's a 5-day gap.
Yeah.
Listen, Forest fans, if you don't like this, trust me, you've got worse to come next year when
Next
you get
year.
in Europe. This
Champions
is a regular
League.
week after week. So if you've got a big game, yeah. To be fair, Pep said that yesterday. He's like, we normally like I've got an FA Cup semi-final like 3 days after a Champions League semi-final or 3 days before, and it's a bit of a nightmare. Forest might be a little bit unlucky here. Would have to play. I mean, they could go to extra time with City, couldn't they? And then have the Brentford game 34. That's the most logical. Is 32 possible? I've heard asked. And the answer is yes, but we are at circa 14 to 16 days notice. That feels a bit bonkers to be forced in there
When it
when it
doesn't need to
doesn't
be.
have to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So my confidence in it staying in 34 would be less than confident than the others moving to 33, but I would say more than 50%. You're looking at probably game at 34, probably circa about 60% confident that it's going to go in 34. It could be that it's held to the end, but the logic to me would suggest the Wednesday in game week 34. Therefore, wouldn't be a blank. It would remain just a single game week fixture in game week 34. And therefore, the four teams, Arsenal, Palace, City, Villa, who double in 33, would blank 34. And that's kind of it.
Yep, makes absolute sense. Can you fix it, James, so that Palace and Forest win their semis?
Because
Because I'd much rather have Palace with Tottenham and Wolves and Forest with Leicester and West Ham as the doubles later in the season so that I could use my bench boost later. I think the doubles would fall nicer if Palace and Forest
well,
were.
I definitely can't fix that, and I can definitely tell you that
Oh,
the bookies odds
what?
will have a City v Villa final, mate. I'm afraid
Yeah,
to say.
looks likely.
I want to talk about the importance of TV, and we should remember that, right? Forest v Brentford is not a TV selected game. The other two postponed fixtures
Yet.
are. There is relevance. Yes, Forest Brentford could be picked up. I don't think it'll be picked up if it's in 34, by the way. But if it's moved to 36 or 37,
Maybe.
it might be. Yeah. One thing I keep thinking is kind of as I said, if City, Villa, and Arsenal Palace go into 33 as is now projected, what are Sky? And they will want to, you're talking about their game week 33 wet dream, right? So what are they going to do in the midweeks of 36, 37? So the current projection is still as it was prior to the semi-finals, is a Manchester City versus Aston Villa FA Cup final. First big caveat is I think Palace are unbeaten in the last four games against Villa. What floor of them at Selhurst Park a few weeks ago as well. So by no means a foregone conclusion. And Forest beat City very recently as well. It absolutely could be a Palace Forest final. But we have to work on the projections as they are. The current projection is that Villa v Tottenham and Manchester City v Bournemouth will be brought forward from game week 37 to game week 36. Now, Villa Tottenham has already covered. In the eventuality that Tottenham got to the Europa semis, it has to be brought forward if Villa also make the FA Cup final. My logic on City v Bournemouth, if City made the final, being brought forward, is just out a little bit of fairness that both teams have to play before the final. And then Sky can potentially have their own little bit of wet dream that night, that week, where they have maybe Friday to Monday, City v Bournemouth perhaps on the TV on the Tuesday night. Villa Tottenham has already determined has to be the Wednesday night. Has to be because and the fact that Tottenham would make the Europa League semis, they played a Sunday before. Again, not going to make anyone play twice inside 48 hours. So it's shit for Villa before the final. So if you're a Villa fan, pretty much you want Tottenham knocked out of Europe, I would suggest.
Right.
And then it could just stay as a single fixture in 37. But I think as a consequence of Villa Tottenham having to be brought forward, we should currently project that the other fixture, whether it's City, Bournemouth, West Ham v Forest, is also brought forward. This is where I also said they might do something like if Forest v Leicester was the Monday night in 36, that would block West Ham v Forest coming forward. They have to go backwards. We're not going to make Forest play Monday, Wednesday, final Saturday, are they?
No,
right?
no.
And again, this is going to be determined before you know who's in the final. So Sky might try and rig it. Don't rule them out of taking the piss, is what I would say. The Game Week 36 TV picks should have been announced last week.
Right.
The announcement of the 33 doubles may come with it. I would suggest the probability of getting that announcement before tomorrow's Game Week 30 deadline has increased. It has increased because it looks more simple. It's actually worked out, I think, not too bad for the schedulers. It's so obvious that Villa is the Saturday semi-final. The other semi-final is the Sunday. City v Villa goes Tuesday. Arsenal v Palace goes Wednesday. Then you decide what you want to do with Forest Brentford. It just feels so logically I think most of us could just put that together and go, yeah, that works, that works. You're not scheduling 6 or 8 games. We've done this in the past, right? This is just, we're talking about scheduling 5 football matches. I wouldn't be surprised if the FA Cup semi-final dates got announced today. And this might move quicker, where I'd kind
And
of
the
warn,
rearrangements as well, or just the FA Cup semi-final?
I don't see why not, actually, because
Okay.
it just looks so obvious. There's certain things you've got to put in place that we don't think about, which is like, right, you've got to make sure you've got right. Police can, particularly say for like a London game, can the police cover the game? That sort of thing. You need to check on all these things. So it's not just a case of the Premier League go, you're there.
Yeah.
Right? I would highly doubt that the police have got something in London on a Wednesday night in April that's going to stop them policing Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. But you still need to check on these things. Is that okay, right? Because if the police can't cover a football match, there's no football match. But the police will be aware that games will get rearranged in April and May at short notice. So
Right.
I don't foresee a problem, but you still need to make the right calls rather than just go, yeah, okay, the game's there. Interestingly, the Game Week 35 TV picks were announced last Tuesday. Now, that should have been the week before, and we should already have the Game Week 36 TV picks. So it might be that it all comes together. Game Week 36 TV picks possibly tomorrow with the Game Week 33 fixtures. Good luck to you if it drops at like 5:30 p.m. UK time. It's worth saying it did drop at lunchtime last Tuesday. It was quite early. So you might be lucky. We might get the information before tomorrow's Game Week 30 deadline. I cannot promise that that will be the case.
If only they must have thought about it before the fixtures this weekend. If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. You think, why wouldn't they even just plan so that we know and just, okay, well, we know what's happened now. So if this, then that, and just roll it out.
Are you giving them too much credit?
Of course I am. And I'm not giving Sky enough credit in terms of the power that they wield that you have mentioned.
Oh, Sky will be very clever in what they do. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Forest end up with, say, Leicester on the Monday night. Now, a different thing they might do, by the way, for an example like Game Week 36, which they could do, is do something like move Liverpool v Arsenal, which is obviously a big game, might even be where the title was decided, move it to the Monday or the Tuesday night. I wouldn't be that shocked. So if Sky think, I can't have my wet dream in Game Week 36 of how the schedule might work, I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly we've got Liverpool v Arsenal on the Tuesday night. Still, obviously, just a single Game Week fixture, but to spread their fixtures out. Also, imagine that they will try and pick up the games of the teams that could have their 37 fixture postponed. So expect them probably to pick up Villa v Tottenham, Man City v Bournemouth. These games could have an impact on Champions League places.
Yep.
Same is obviously true of West Ham v Forest. Expect TNT to pick up one of these games. The other game is Palace Wolves. In theory, Wolves' potential impact on the relegation zone, but probably unlikely, right? Unlikely. So Palace Wolves, maybe not. I think the other three will be picked up across TNT as Sky, so that when they have to be moved, right, we've got our midweek fixtures in place. I have wondered recently if the Premier League have been planning a contingency week all along. And I mentioned this, and it feels a bit distasteful to mention it, but I wonder if in reflection it's something maybe we should even think about for next season, that they're thinking about contingency week. The King of England, unfortunately, we know has been treated for cancer at the moment and cancelled some appointments last week. Now, no one's suggesting, and heaven forbid the worst would happen, but we know when obviously Elizabeth passed that we lost a whole set of fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was postponed. And again, relate back to, can the police do the game? Well, a lot of that was to just the security of hosting the events that short notice because it was such an event in the UK. If, in theory, the worst happened and you had to postpone a whole set of fixtures, they could, in theory, all be moved, I think, to say the midweek of 36. And then whatever was postponed for the cup final then just stayed in that week in 37. One exception is Tottenham.
Tottenham if you're still in Europa League.
Correct.
If you're still in the Europa League.
Under that circumstance where Tottenham got to the Europa League, it'd have to be the final, you'd have a huge problem. Tottenham would have to play a schedule like a Tuesday and Thursday in 36 or something like that, possibly. There may be a way of manipulating around it where they put a Tottenham fixture on the weekend whilst Villa played an FA Cup final, and you might have to jog some things around. I mentioned this as well because someone said, what's the maddest thing that could happen between now and the end of the season? Maddest thing that could happen, in my opinion, between now and the end of the season is that 20 teams double in game week 36. This is obviously extremely unlikely, and you cannot prepare for it.
But it is the maddest. Okay, I get it.
That is the maddest thing that can happen. And for those who are thinking of holding their bench boost at the end, let me tell you, if that happens, that's remarkable, because I don't think it's going to look great for bench boost at the end. So 37 fixtures. There are obviously 4 fixtures that can move. It says City, Bournemouth, Villa, Tottenham, Palace, Wolves, and West Ham against Nottingham Forest. There is no science to forward or backwards as far as I'm concerned, other than the logic we know the Villa Tottenham game, as already explained, may have to be brought forward to game week 36. I want to highlight something actually though, Suj, that was flagged on West Ham's website by it was flagged by a few people, but Harry Daniels had our good friend had flagged it to me. And this is on West Ham's website, Suj. It says West Ham's home, and they explained this was after the TV picks on Tuesdays. It was posted on Tuesday, and they explained a lot of things that could happen with West Ham's fixtures, i.e., Tottenham in game week 35 will move to the Sunday if Tottenham are in Europa League semi-finals because they'll play the Thursday before. And what they also said is this interesting line about Nottingham Forest in game week 37. West Ham's home game with Forest will be potentially brought forward to the midweek of Tuesday the 13th, Wednesday the 14th of May. Now that's brought forward to the midweek of 36.
If Forest are in the cup final.
Correct. Absolutely. It raises the question, do the clubs already know that the intention would be to bring any fixture postponed for the cup final forward? Is that a possibility? Now, it could be that they know. It could be that it's someone clever doing the article and he's coming to similar conclusions like you and I and the rest of us are coming to. That's also possible. Because as I said, in the event where Sky went, actually, no, we're going to put Forest Leicester on the Monday night in 36, that would block that, wouldn't it? That then becomes impossible. So therefore, that fixture would have to go back. But it's an interesting line that is put on an official Premier League club's website suggesting that if a game is postponed in 37, it will be brought forward. It follows the logic that we're currently working towards. Should we talk some chips, boss, and using them?
Well, so tell me about your situation now. You just got Assmen and a wild card left.
Yeah, so
it's quite simple for you in terms of not overly complicated.
I mean, the less you've got, the easier it is in terms of your strategy.
I'm on
less choice.
I currently have Assmen, bench boost, and wildcard left. The biggest challenge for me at the moment is the fact that Assmen stretches over 3 game weeks. So in theory, 33 was always bench boost week. Though now with Crystal Palace having a potential double and quite a lot of potential table bonus in there. I mean, in theory, could Brighton, City, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Arsenal as a set of 5 fixtures all be table bonus for Palace? I think so.
Yeah, it would be remarkable if it is all of them. But there is a set of circumstances. I think in terms of the decision for 31, obviously the company is 5 places between Brighton and Palace. So it's 12th to 7th. Now, Palace, you assume, are going to probably win at Southampton. Mm. If Brentford don't win at Newcastle, Palace will jump Brentford. So you want Brighton to beat Villa to make that still a bonus, Palace v Brighton. And you need one of them above to slip up. Now, we've already just eliminated one of them if Newcastle beat Brentford. Then you're relying on Man City to slip up against Leicester. Or Chelsea to slip up against Tottenham. So there's every chance that it won't be a bonus. This week's really important.
Yeah, where I play my bench boost kind of dictates where I play my Assmen. This is, if I'm going to stick to game week 33 for the bench boost, then I'm ruling out a double for Glasner as Assmen, and then I may as well just go now and get the Southampton game and pick up 3 points, 3 being FRE as opposed to 3 points there. Then I've got Brighton, City, Newcastle, though the City Newcastle games are away, or I could chain it on if I decide to If I feel fruity and will leave my bench boost till 36, then I could delay Arsman. So that's kind of at the moment I'm interested. Let's have a chat about these chips because the the fact that the big most annoying thing with Arsman is that it goes over 3 weeks and then you can't play another chip in that time period. With I've got 3 free transfers as well. So rolling in, I'm not going to use another one this week. So going into game week 31, I'll have 4. So we're almost like having 2 wildcards, really.
Yeah, I mean that would enable you. You got free hit left or not?
No, I've used it, didn't I, last
You've
week?
used it, but it would
Yeah.
enable you to jump better from 33 to 34.
Yeah, and then wildcard out in 35 for a bench boost in 36, which means I can play my Assmen now. That's kind of in my thoughts right now. But I hadn't given enough thought into who the Assman would be for that period.
Which you want to start with?
You choose, dealer's
Right.
choice.
Okay, let's start with wildcard. So I think it's viable for people, and everyone's circumstances are a little bit different. I mean, there's going to be some of you out there now looking at 5 or 6 flag players. That's going to be very difficult. So you sitting there going, I'm probably rolling 3 free transfers, right? It's definitely people in a different scenario.
Yeah,
But I think
I
pretty
appreciate that.
much every week between now and 35 would be viable for different reasons. My concern for those going now is only for those setting to boost 33 without all the info. My question is, what if the projections are wrong? What if Sky go, "Oh, bollocks, we ain't putting those games in 33. Sorry, we want it at the end. Do what you do. We've got the rights to the game. We want to hold them to the end." I cannot guarantee you that that won't happen. I don't foresee why that would happen, but Sky do some mad things to fuck shit up, basically. It doesn't make sense to me that there's a free midweek and there's no other. I don't know. Maybe Sky go, right, we want focus on the championship that midweek or something. Like it's possible. So that's the concern. That's I don't have a problem with people wildcarding now. I have an issue with people wildcarding now to bench boost 33 because the fixtures might not be how we're projecting them to land. However, I would say, what's the worst case scenario with those now that we're expecting to double? So if you're going, right, one of the real swings, I think, over the last 48 hours is, right, the intention to get Arsenal players. Fixtures are good. We're now thinking the double 33. You got people like Saka's back in full training, right? It's like, oh, I can definitely see me going Palmer to Saka in 33 as an example, right? So
Yeah.
you've got Arsenal players on radar a lot more. What's the worst case scenario if Arsenal don't double now in 33? Right, well, you got their players away to Ipswich. So what does it actually change? Also, in terms of the bench boost itself, the maximum doublers based on the current projections you could have is 12, right?
Hmm.
You're definitely carrying some single game week players. Now, these might be players like Salah and Isak, who you would probably never want to bench. I get that. But ultimately, if you've got Arsenal doublers, Palace doublers, etc., in 33, they're playing anyway. Most of you are going to have to do this with some single game week players. So how much will it actually change? What I mean by that is if you're sitting down and you're going, yeah, do you know what, bollocks? I'm going to go like Max Kilman because I know that I'm just going to play him in that week because he's got a single fixture against Southampton and I'm bench boosting with that. Like, that's fine, isn't it?
Yep.
You might be setting up to have the rest of your back threes like Munoz double, Vardiol double, Gabriel double, with like Kilman and maybe like another single game week player on the bench, or a Villa doubler, for example. So if the projections don't work, I feel it's a little bit better. Whereas the one concern I had, the one I referenced on the last one, was say like Fulham players. It's like, oh, get someone like Anderson in, or like a Jimenez. And then it's like, if they don't double, you're just stuck with Fulham players against Chelsea. In the circumstance with Arsenal playing Ipswich, or Crystal Palace being at home to Bournemouth, that just are still okay. City players would be at Everton, Villa players great at home against Newcastle. What I'm saying is, if you go for these players that don't then double in 33, if the worst case scenario happened, they've all still got okay fixtures. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
what you want, but also I think your bench boost. I know people like to shithouse it and put like 4 stronger players on the bench, but ultimately you should be using your bench boost, which you think is the best week for your 4 shittest players, ultimately. So I don't know what difference it will make to your bench boost, whether these teams do double or not, other than you just look at the week and go, if people are looking and go, well, I've got more chance of getting 100 points when these teams have got doubles. Yeah, but your extra points come from your four weakest players. How
And
much
some of
will it
these
actually
single, I
change?
mean, Bowen, Southampton at home,
That's what
Leicester
I'm saying. Yeah.
away for Salah.
Yeah.
This is, yeah,
The West Ham case is quite interesting because obviously West Ham go to Liverpool in 32. So you think, oh, I don't want to play them
don't
in
want it for
that.
that. Yeah.
But still, as a single fixture in 33, if you're like, oh, I'm going to carry a West Ham enabler, and actually West Ham, actually from 33 onwards, have some decent fixtures at the end where, they finish at Ipswich in 38, for example. These players might be useful for you. That there is obviously the possibility, if you're shorter chips, West Ham, as discussed, could double in 36, right? Could be for West Ham, Man United away, and Nottingham Forest at home. By the way, under that circumstance, it works a little bit similar for Forest, where they would maybe have to play on the Wednesday in 37 because West Ham Man United might have to be on the Sunday if Manchester United are still in Europe. My preference personally is to wait for 31, but it is circumstantial. There's two reasons why I prefer that. I think most people, and I say most, are landing with a decent team this week. But I certainly accept that there's people looking at their teams now going, James, I've got Haaland, Wood, Trent, Hall, and more flag players, and like, but I've got to do it now. Crack on. Crack
Yeah,
on,
I
of
agree with
course.
you. Yeah.
Crack on. My
So
preference
quite a
is
lot of the content creator. I think Andy's got pulled his wild card. I think one of the guys on above average was saying they pulled a wild card.
I mean, to be honest, I think I told Andy to do it in 29, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
So, look, if you're in that bad situation, what I would say is if you're looking at this team going this week and you're going, it's all right. Take a scenario like me. I've got Pickford right away to Liverpool. Like, it's not great. But the other 10 look all right. If I bring Marmoush in for, say, Wood, I'm like, okay, the rest of this looks fine. I wouldn't need to wildcard now. If I was setting to bench boost, I'd be waiting one more week to make sure I've got the right information. And also, in theory, you want to be as close to that bench boost as possible. I would be very tempted personally if I was wildcarding now to be set into bench boost in 32. Still, we'll come back onto that. I don't see much benefit of wildcarding in 32 other than it being closer to the 33 bench boost. But it feels like you're doing that then probably to go 6 Palace and Newcastle players. I'm going to guess. Maybe because you can't get to them now. Maybe you're on none. But do you still not want to attack them now, bearing in mind Palace play Southampton this week and Newcastle play Leicester in 31? There's reasons to attack these teams now rather than 32, right? Also, if you then did that and you wildcarded in 32 and your bench boost in 33, I'm going to guess you're carrying probably at least one Newcastle defensive asset,
through.
or you're carrying something like a Jacob Murphy, and then what you're bench boosting with that away to Villa doesn't feel great. So I don't like that one so much. I would say if you're wildcarding in 33, you're doing it almost acting like a free hit and doing it for the end. Remember, teams that double in 33, particularly in the case of those that are still in the FA Cup, so City, Villa, Palace, obviously could end up doubling again in 36. So you probably want the free hit 34 to go with it. But I can see some sense in that a little bit less now. Palace are likely to obviously double. Because I think if it had been someone else, you go, right, attack Newcastle Palace, wild card out, free hit 34. I may have some more doublers in 36. 34 is probably going to be the option for me because I need to get away from these doublers, right? I don't have a free hit. Free hit will be best served as covered for many in sort of 33, 34. I'm going to need to get away from what I've got in 33. 34 is going to look almost, it's highly likely to look horrendous, even though it will only be 4 teams blanking on the current projections. So that'll work for me. 35 will work better for others. Perhaps if they can manage 34 better, or obviously maybe even use the free hit in 34. And one benefit, of course, of 35 rather than 34, you will know how the end of the season is going to look, almost certainly. The 34 deadline, you can't because the FA Cup semi-finals are that weekend.
Right.
Then you at least know what the final is. So you at least know which games will move. And because it's so close, think about it. The 34 weekend to the 37 weekend is 3 weeks. There's no internationals in the middle or anything like that. So if you're arranging a game for the midweek of 36, from the Monday after 34, you've got like 16 days notice or so, haven't you? It's going to be quick.
It's quite a lot.
We're not going to get to the Friday for 35 and not know. That's kind of my point here, right? So if you wait for 35, you'll have the full info. In terms of, and I know it'll be, who should I go on Wildcard? Right, I'm not going to go through that. Clates and I are doing two special podcasts this week, Chip Talk podcasts. We'll do one tomorrow. We'll try and keep it quite short and get it out quite early. We're going to look specifically at Game Week 30 wildcards. We're then going to do the same on Friday and look at Game Week 31 wildcards specifically. And we will break that down to look at setting to bench boost 32 or setting to bench boost 33 or having a lack of chips and having to cover the whole way because you're in an injury crisis situation. So we'll look at 31 specifically in more detail. My advice would be if you're broken at the moment, go for it. Just acknowledge the concern I've said about 33 bench boost. Bench boost. Three options for me. 32, 33, or pray.
Yeah.
Because I cannot promise you right now that Game Week 36 won't have 10 fixtures in it and Game Week 37 won't have 10 fixtures in it. And what I mean by that is they're both just single game weeks. There's nothing now, and I think, again, we'll use the Villa Tottenham scenario, but let's say the final is Palace Forest. You said, oh, that's the best. Bring those games forward to 36. Right. I can't promise you that they won't just be in the midweek afterwards in 37.
The thing with the bench boost right now for me is it's okay to do in a single, you did it in a single game week. It's okay to do in a single game week when you've got four good players.
Yep.
I think I need to take the pressure of having doublers out, because then as soon as you take the pressure of bench boosting in a double game week out, you have twice as many game weeks between now and the end of the season to potentially think about playing it, right? I've got a couple of, well, as it stands right now, because I've got Valdemarson as my reserve keeper, Trent's injured for me right now, Mikalenko's flagged. It doesn't look good. But once I've moved a few pieces around to get myself more Palace and Newcastle, and those are the players that make way for that, there's any given single game week where it looks okay for me in terms of what I have. And that's the point at which I think I just need to do it and not try and hang my hat on a double game week.
Yeah. So your example this week with Valdemarson, you're not doing it now, right?
No.
I think there are, I'd suggest
let me give you an example. I've got Flecken right now, right? I want to buy Henderson maybe. Let's say I wanted to get Henderson as another Palace asset. I'll sell Valdemarson for Henderson and keep Flecken there so that I've got that as my bench boost option rather than moving Flecken onto Henderson or what have you.
By the way, I'd strongly consider doing that this week.
Yeah, it's not off the table with the number of free transfers that I have. It's not.
But then Flecken is your other one, like...
If I do it in 32, then I've got Arsenal away. It's not great, but...
No, it's not, mate.
No. If I do it in 33, then Brighton at home for Flecken. It's all right. Yeah. Like, it's my reserve goalkeeper. That's not going to be the deal breaker on my...
No, I hear that. To be honest, I was looking ahead at the fixtures, and probably for them too, it's probably 35 or 37 if you ended up with that sort of combination. And I think you are drawn to look at that, by the way, what your goalkeeper combinations are, because I think we're drawn to want certainly two goalkeepers, I think, where we can. Now, for many people, unless you're kind of going Pope and Henderson 32, or I mean, if you look at the teams that will double in 33, are you going to pay for like Henderson and Raya or Henderson and Edison or Henderson and Martinez? I mean, arguably, I'd rather put money in the bank for $1 million and just hope that Areola's fit when West Ham play Southampton. And you can use that $1 million somewhere else, right? If you're set in that sort of way. I like 32 for the bench boost. I like it because it's kind of definitive. And I guess there is a tiny chance that you could end up throwing Forest and Brentford in there, very tiny. That would only make things look better anyway, surely, the potential to have more players. I like it because there's some cheap stuff from other teams that you can have that have got single game week fixtures. Because ultimately, if you are bench boosting in 32, even if you do have 6 from Newcastle Palace, I don't believe they're in your 4 weakest players, even though Palace's double is 2 really rough away games. Sorry, I'd be playing them. This is back to socks in bed. But the likes of Brighton, so I mentioned the likes of Dunk, like I'd stress concern about Minter this week, but I probably wouldn't be concerned about him 32. Enabling assets could end up part of your bench boost. Brighton against Leicester. Some cheap Chelsea players playing Ipswich at home. in the same game week. So Maresca's kind of given us the Sanchez is going to play in goal now. Something like Levi Colwell, you go, I'm not going to use it much, but fine. You can probably play it. I think Chalobah and Adarabioyo would probably be meh. You could pay a bit more, go for Cucurella. If you think like, well, I'm just going to go one premium, put something like that in, make it look a little bit stronger. You've got Forest against Everton. So you like see Nico Williams. Villa at Southampton. My concern with the Villa at Southampton is good luck guessing what the Villa team will be. Because that falls 3 days after PSG, 3 days before PSG. And they've got so many options. So maybe not so much Villa. So 33 looks like better than it did, I think, prior to the weekend, despite it having one less projected fixture. So we were projecting Brighton, West Ham, Southampton, Fulham before the weekend to go into 33. We've lost them, and then we've only got Arsenal, Crystal Palace in its place. But Arsenal, Crystal Palace were way more interest to us, right? Palace with Southampton
Because
now.
Palace, because you owned the week before as well.
You owned from the week before, and actually Arsenal now it's good fixtures with a likely double in 33. Whereas, so more teams which is diving into Southampton. You weren't. I think Fulham's fixtures are terrible in the run up to 33. So by consequence, it just feels for me like Arsenal Palace has replaced Brighton versus West Ham. And again, as said, even if they did become single game week fixtures, you'd still have Arsenal players at Ipswich, for example. It's fine. I would have strong concerns if people are like, I'm going to get as many doublers as possible for 33. So we've used the example of Palace, who have pretty much gone strong in the cups. But I think personally, if they play at Arsenal on the Wednesday before an FA Cup semi-final, you are going to get some rotation. I truthfully would not expect Mateta to start both games in 33. I would in 32, but not in 33. So obviously, he's still not a bad asset. Probably get half hour at Arsenal or something. I think Nketiah will play under that sort of circumstance. And I think you would have some other changes. Similarly, Villa at City. Right. So which Villa players are going to play Newcastle Saturday and Man City on the Tuesday ahead of the Cup semi on the Saturday? Bearing in mind they've had PSG the midweek before as well, although on the Tuesday. Emi Martinez probably.
Yep.
And Morgan Rogers we know is indestructible. But surely even there's a chance, particularly that Southampton game, surely there's a chance even Morgan Rogers doesn't start something here.
If I was doing something in that game, it'd be a gamble. Like I'd be gambling on a Rashford or something like that. It'd be a gamble. I'd be like, punting is a better word maybe than gambling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd want to take a punt on someone.
Just a note on Rashford, it's an absolute minor one. It's way in the future. But there is obviously a chance with Marcus Rashford that you could blank in 37 and 38. If you were thinking longer term, I mean, it'd be worth transferring out, obviously. But they've got Man United in 38, so he'd be ineligible. 37, the Tottenham game obviously could come forward. So, yeah, it's kind of pick your poison between 32, 33. I look at 33 and I think, like, what does your actual 4 weakest players look like? Is it stuff, as I said, like Livramento and Murphy away to Villa? Whereas in 32, you might be looking at like Dunk against Leicester, Colwell against Ipswich, those sort of things. I don't know. I'd just be weighing it up, and I wouldn't commit to not looking at 32. For those who haven't, I would just look at it. If you want a bench boost at the end, you're hoping for a bit of a miracle.
When you say miracle, you're hoping for more than one double to fall into any given. Yeah.
Okay. Let's even do, we just spoke about rotation concerns for 33, right? Let's use an example where the FA Cup final is Villa against Tottenham. Villa against Forest, right? And Villa Tottenham and the West Ham Forest games, by consequence, are brought forward to the Wednesday. So they play on the Wednesday night before an FA Cup final, right? How many Villa and Forest players do you want?
Before the Cup semi.
No, if this was in 36. So I'm saying, if Forest, you're saying that about Forest having a double, Leicester at home, West Ham away, right? Let's say they have to play West Ham on the Wednesday before an FA Cup final. Okay? Because the chance are, if Man United is still in Europe, that game's got to be the Wednesday. Even if the Forest-Leicester game was on the Friday, it still have to be the Wednesday if it's brought forward, as suggested by West Ham's website. So how many Forest players, Forest going to double twice. How many do you want when they've got an FA Cup final 3 days later? Particularly if Imagine they've sewn up top five by this point. It's possible.
Sells, I think keepers rarely get rotated. So sells, I would say.
If not in a Forest, we're in a
Maybe two.
situation where they had top five confirmed with 2 games to go, and they are playing at West Ham 3 days for an FA Cup final. Surely not in a Forest change the whole team.
I would pray for that.
The
But
whole
as a
team
West Ham fan,
ain't going to
I
make
think
no
Sells will
difference to
play.
your shite season. And by the way, if Villa changed their whole team against Tottenham under the same circumstance, ain't going to make a difference to my season either, right? And in terms of Tottenham then doubling, if that scenario has happened, Tottenham have played Lazio away Thursday probably, or played in Lapland against Bodo Glimt, Crystal Palace on the Sunday, and then Aston Villa Wednesday. Again, like good luck picking. What's Tottenham's most important game? It's the Thursday. So the best players ain't then playing Sunday and Wednesday. So what are we left with for 36 that looks good? West Ham players. Woohoo.
Yeah, no, that doesn't fill me full of joy. I get your
And
point there with that.
those fixtures could also just move to 37. One of the major problems I also have with the idea of, say, bench boosting 36 is some dodge fixtures. For example, Liverpool and Arsenal play each other. Newcastle and Chelsea play each other. So are you going to want your Isaks, Salahs? Now, of course, these guys would play for you anyway, but I don't think that helps when you're trying to put a bench boost team together. Now, I think if I was doing it at the end, and let's say I landed in 35 and it's like, shit, there's no doubles at all in 36. I think you're attacking things like Brentford, have good fixtures at the end, Ipswich away. I'd arguably be having some Fulham enablers on the bench, like Everton at home, Brighton players like Wolves away. This is what I'm saying you might end up bench boosting with in 36. Is like Fulham players against Everton. I'm saying that this is how it could end up.
Yep.
And I'm concerned about it. I would personally, in your scenario, Suj, where you've got the bench boost and the assistant manager left, although I think the assistant manager will be better served now, I would get rid of that bench boost. Not as in just throw it away, but I would be using it between now and game week 33. Because although the assistant manager might be better served now, you will have something at the end.
Well, this is the thing, right? Let's take that example that
You
you
might
used,
have
the
nothing
Nottingham
for the bench
Forest.
boost, man.
Let's use that example of Nottingham Forest. They're in the FA Cup final and they're playing West Ham on the Wednesday, and they're rotating the entire team.
Bang.
Potter is on the table for you. There will be a number
100%.
of teams that will have other like Tottenham, right? You got Thursday. Well, there's no one lower enough in the league than you that could get bench table bonus because we're both doing so shit. But teams that are prioritizing elsewhere,
Yep.
it could happen.
You
Even
could
like
you could
Crystal
have
Palace.
same. You could have Wolves ended up with a double in 36, of Brighton at home bonus game, and then a Crystal Palace team that might completely rotate in the midweek afterwards, also bonus. So I think what I would say is if you're holding the assistant manager to the end, I think you need to plan potentially for having 3 different managers. Because if something like that happens, you're going to go, right, well, I need to go Potter or Pereira, but then they're going to blank in 37. So you've got to move again.
Yep.
And you may want to move one more. So there are things at the end. I mean, look, there's a chance for Pep double at the end with like no bonus. You might like Wolves at home 35, Southampton and Bournemouth 36, and then you just go somewhere else in 37. There will be something for the assistant managers to go and attack at the end, even if it is just single game week fixtures. The bench boost might look a complete bust. Now, we also certainly accept the assistant manager is more valuable than the bench boost.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the bench boost can easily outscore the assistant manager in any one
But
week.
also
though, as
weigh
well.
in the consequence of planning for that bench boost. Like if your wild card in 31's a bench boost 32, it's like bish bash bosh, isn't it? That at the end, if you're wild card in 35 and there's no doubles, you're like, I'm going to bench boost 36, you're sweating.
Yeah, I get that. Whereas assistant manager, you're only worried about one asset, your manager, not maybe 5, 6, 7 players. I get that. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So that's it could land nice for that bench boost at the end. But I think honestly, truthfully, even if you do have teams double in 36, I think it's probably a disaster. I think.
But for you, without the bench boost, you think 31 to 33 is still the most likely for you. For Assmen, we transition
Well, I
into
don't have the
talking about
bench
Assmen.
boost, so it's
Yeah,
I
so
think
Assmen
it's an
now.
easier, straightforward call. If I had the bench boost left, to be honest, if
Be
I
in
had the
my
wild
shoes,
card,
so you do what you're recommending to me
no,
is
yeah,
get it out
but
of the way a little bit.
you've got all these. You haven't got the free hit, have you?
No, it's just the three
No,
free
but
transfers
you
for
have
now.
got all these transfers. Those transfers really probably for you, if you wild carded now, need to be your manipulation from 33 to 34.
Yep.
Also got a factor, by the way. Consider this also, right? You wildcard 35. Let's say there's four teams doubling 36. You wildcard 35. Oh, yeah, I'm going to smash into doublers 36. Right. Guess what those doublers are doing in 37?
Blank in.
Right. So how many can you have? So what do you need? You need to get to 35 wildcard, bench boost, and have five free transfers to get from 36 to 37. You can't commit too hard to 36.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. That's my opinion. Assistant manager. So I do, it absolutely looks better. I think 31 to 33. We were quite concerned about it. I think those of us were looking for Glasner were like, please get that Arsenal game in there. It's interesting because what do we actually think Palace will do at Arsenal 3 days for an FA Cup semi-final? Probably nothing. But it's could they get a draw and pick me up 10 points? Obviously, the Palace fixtures could look rough. As you said earlier, there is the potential now that it is five bonus games after, from 31 to 33. And there's no way of knowing that at the time of committing, right? But if the Brighton game is a bonus, yeah, that's where I'm going. Nothing to think about. I know I've got Brighton at home as a bonus. I know I've got, yes, it's a shitty away, but I've got Newcastle, Man City. I know a bonus. I know Arsenal would be a bonus if it goes in there. If the Bournemouth game's a bonus as well, it's a dream. It would be worth doing just to have the Brighton and Bournemouth two home games as potential bonus. So currently there's only two places between Palace, Bournemouth, but Bournemouth got some good fixtures between now and then. The consequence is, though, you want Palace to start picking up points, but Palace can't jump too high, right? There's still quite a bit of a gap between, say, Palace and Bournemouth.
Right.
I think like for Palace to get in the top half would be quite tough. So even if Palace did beat Southampton, Brighton, City, for example, I don't think it even guarantees them being in the top half. There's still quite a bit of a gap between Palace and Bournemouth. So yeah, I think that's what I'd want to do. If it's not a bonus, there is a case to go Unai Emery instead. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, we've spoken about the problems of Villa assets for 32 and 33. You'd be going straight into the bonus of Nottingham Forest at home. That's looks kind of a lot. But if Villa win at Brighton, it's not. And then by consequence, you haven't got Glasner as a bonus either. So Villa winning at Brighton in 31 is potentially a bit of a disaster for the Assmen in terms of those two key ones, bonus games being taken away. Now, obviously, if Emery does have the bonus 31, it's Forest at home, then it's Southampton away, and then you've got Newcastle at home and Man City away. Could also be bonus, but might not. The Palace ones you can look at and say, yeah, there's a few there that are pretty
Definitely
guaranteed to be
guaranteed.
bonus. Yeah,
Arsenal and that. Yeah,
there'll
yeah.
be some for Arsenal's like a guarantee. There's a few in there that are highly likely going to be bonus. With the Villa games beyond Forest at home, you couldn't guarantee anything. But I may look at a move, Suj, where if Villa was a bonus and Palace wasn't, I might go, right, I'm going Emery 31 and then I'm going to Glasner
Yep.
32. So I don't need to make that decision now. Let's wait and see what happens in game
After
week
30.
30. I think in the circumstance where neither of them had the bonus, I'd probably still go into something. I think I'm probably highly likely to commit to 31, 33. I can't look at 32 to 34. I don't think the options in 34 are great anyway. I'm going to need to wildcard to get out of it personally. One other consideration would, of course, be Eddie Howe. So you go, right, well, I'm going to go Eddie Howe, Leicester away, two good home games, Man United, Palace, no bonus. But you look at them on paper and think Newcastle probably win two, draw one, probably worst case scenario. And then you chain it on to one of the other doublers in 33. I don't think you just keep Howe for Villa away, unless there was some wild swing that was then a bonus for Newcastle. You could also go Eddie Howe now. So I know there'll be a group of people like, shit, how am I getting this assistant manager and bench boost in? Right, well, you could, I think, go Eddie Howe now. No bonus. You just add in Brentford at home in now. Brentford at home, Leicester away. The two home games, you go a little bit kind of the Fury with Slot earlier. I've got like a base of what this should be in terms of
Yeah,
points.
4 games there. You want at
I'm
least 2 wins, 2 draws.
I'm going to go with that,
It's
and then I'm
about
going to
30 points as a minimum,
and
30,
then
35 points.
bench boost 33. But I think you have to land in an incredibly fortuitous scenario where your team looks strong enough now to say, yeah, I'm going to bench boost in 33. That's difficult to plan for without putting a wild card in there over this point. I think that would be a possibility. I think Arteta is now potentially of interest as well, 31 to 33. So I might even come to the conclusion, so similarly, if Villa and Palace didn't have the bonuses in 31, I might go, right, do you know what? I'm just going to go Arteta, Everton away, Brentford at home, and then the double of Ipswich away, Palace at home. And a heavily rotated Palace possibly, thinking, yeah, it's got to be sort of minimum 30 or so. It would feel like. So I might even make that choice. So I think Arteta has kind of added himself back into 31 to 33. I don't see any reason to really explore much else across 31, 33. You may make a decision to go, you could go Guardiola, same reasons, but I don't think it's quite as attractive as Arsenal's from a fixture perspective, personally. No, so I think it's probably Emery, Howe, Glasner, Arteta, somewhere across 31, 33. In terms of at the end, as said earlier, there will be something, even if it is just single game week fixtures where you're like, right, sod it. Brighton have got nothing to play for. Wolves need points to guarantee staying up. Right, I'm going to go Pereira against Brighton. And then I'm going to chain it on the next week. And I'm going to go, let's say Forest have got top five wrapped up and they don't have a cup final. Yep. Right, I'm going to go Potter West Ham against Forest. There will be stuff like that I think worst case scenario, you can chain at the end and go, right, I'm going to have that. You might have Tottenham against Brighton game at 38. Maybe Tottenham have got themselves sorted and that's a bonus game. There will be stuff at the end where I think you can attack home teams against teams that may have nothing to play for. I would rather do that than have the bench boost at the end. But as per what we've been saying regularly on these chip pods, Suj, I think the majority of stuff's best played in 33, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's all kind of the perfect storm.
Which is the same case for free hit. I think ideally that's what you do, isn't it? You free hit 33 and you go treble City, treble Arsenal, bit of Palace, bit of Villa. You might want to keep like Salah at Leicester and stuff like that.
If you're playing an offensive free hit, then yes. If you're playing a defensive free hit, then you need it for 34.
Correct. I think it's probably going to be better served for most people in 34. But whether you use it 33 or 34 is going to be subject to what your team's got, right? And how well you're going to be set moving towards 33. I would suggest for those without the wild card like me, it would probably be better to just use it in 34. And in 34, there's still stuff you can attack, right? Newcastle, Wolves, and Fulham all play the bottom three. Liverpool against Tottenham, Cole Palmer, other Chelsea players at home to Everton. So you can still put I think a really good free hit 34 team together. Bournemouth at home to Man United. If you're just attacking that single week, I think that's fine. And it's worth saying in the cases like particularly like Newcastle and Bournemouth, the fixtures after 34 aren't so great. 33, you're obviously attacking the doublers, maybe Bruno Fernandes home to Wolves, stuff like that. 36 attack doublers if it happens. The one benefit of having the free hit at the end is where we're saying, planning for teams who might rotate heavily. Well, if you're there at the time, I guess you can plan for that specifically. And obviously 37 could also cover for if you did go really heavy, wildcard 35, plan to bench boost 36, and you really went heavy for doublers, I guess you could free hit 37.
Yep.
But that whole gig might be a complete bust. Few people have been asking me, particularly my Ask James recently, about free hitting in 38. And I don't mind it. I don't mind it because there's a few teams who have good 38 fixtures who I think their period 35 to 37 is not great. So, for example, Arsenal play at Southampton after playing Bournemouth, Liverpool, Newcastle. Newcastle have Everton at home after playing Brighton away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. Bournemouth play Leicester at home after trips to Arsenal and Man City. Playing Villa at home. So, I mean, that could be 9 quite conceivably across an Arsenal, Newcastle, Bournemouth that you might not have a lot of coverage of. It's also things like West Ham at Ipswich, Jared Bowen. You can obviously punt some others who might have some good home fixtures and stuff. So there might be something there for 38.
You'll know who's playing for what as well.
Yes. Of course you will. The other thing that people like on 38 is the idea that they'll get leaks and stuff. You need to be prepared for that sort of thing. You can never know now whether you will or you won't get the information. From my memory, not last year, but the year before, it was a bit of a mess. There was a lot of information going around that wasn't great on the
Yep.
day. So I think probably 33 offensively, 34 to cover. For most people, using it in one of those 2 weeks would make sense. Triple captain's got a bit more interesting, particularly if our man Haaland was ruled out for a while. I think Isak 32,
It's not that easy yet.
Haaland, Marmoush, or Saka in 33 if the game's going now. I'd say more Marmoush, obviously, if Haaland is unavailable, might really appeal. And Haaland 36. What I'd like, and we covered this previously about preparing for Haaland in 36, if he had a double there, is in the worst case scenario that it's not, you've still got Haaland away to Southampton.
Yeah,
So,
it's a safety net, is there? Yeah.
correct. I think personally, unless you're committed to something else in 32, I would be triple captain Isak in 32. 2 home fixtures, just not even bothered about the opponent, to be honest, it's enough.
Yeah.
And not overthink it. He would highly likely play both games. There's no reason to think there's a real minutes concern there or anything. So unless you were using something else in 32, my preference would be, just get out on Isak 32, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's it covered.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to digest there. I think there is quite a bit to digest. I think I need to kind of decide 32, 33 as a bench boost week for me. If I do 32 or 33 as a bench boost week, what does that leave me in 34 to wildcard out of? And then where do I drop my Assmen 35, 36, 37, 38? That's the most likely for me. It wouldn't surprise me if 32 bench boost over 33 is where I end up, James.
Yeah, I don't mind it because I think like we get obsessed with what's the best my week can be. And obviously you've got 2 more teams doubling in 33 than 32. So your overall 11, yeah, sure looks greater. But ultimately, realistically, and again, I know people shithouse it and it's absolutely fine, but you should bench boost in the week that you think that your 4 worst players will do the best across the season. And I do look at the single game week fixtures in 32 and think that's better than 33. You've got to bench boost in 33 with single game week players, even if the 2 fixtures do go in there. And I don't think the alternatives are great. In a weird way, had Arsenal not doubled, you could have gone, happily single game week with Arsenal players, right? You'd happily do it with Liverpool players away to Leicester. So I'd still be kind of having Liverpool strongly in my thoughts if I was wildcarding now and bench boosting 33 and thinking about, do you know what? Santa's a bit wanky and shit like Konate. I think you're out of Europe. He's probably going to play the games. It's a bit crap, but it's good for a sub like every week. I'd probably be looking at things like that. Do you want to rely on United against Wolves and go for things like, I don't know, Dorgu or something when they've got a European fixture on the Thursday before they play Wolves? Like if you're setting for that now, shit. I use the West Ham reference. The only thing I'd say with something like a Jared Bowen, he wouldn't be part of my 4 shittest players in 33 playing Southampton at home. But something like a Max Kilman might be, or if I've got an Areola and I've got like a Henderson doubling, then yeah, I think Areola, if you're bench boosting 33, that's your one, isn't it?
Yep.
I think with a doubler, and you go for that rather than paying an extra million for
Henderson Areola rotation might be one because then you get Henderson for the double in 32 as well.
At least then with Areola as well, you've got a fixture. It's not great, but you've got Brighton away at 34. You know that you've got that. West Ham's fixtures actually in the running is not too bad, and Palace obviously in the immediate's fine. So you could even say, right, it's Henderson up to 33, Areola with him in 33, and then Areola for the running maybe, bar where Palace's fixture with Wolves goes, or if they doubled in 36.
Yep. Cool, James. That's a wrap. Do we have questions on the old internet, or have we covered them all off?
I don't know. I've not looked. That's normally your job, boss.
It is. You do the Blue Sky business, though, James, which I need to use more because I'm not really using Twitter. I do have the questions up in front of me. FPL McFred didn't like your Eze picture.
That's fair enough.
It looked a little bit scary, but it was a great goal, wasn't it?
Cracking goal.
Yeah. getting into a little bit of rhythm.
We mentioned this as a theory a little while ago, and it's part silly in jest, but there is a theory that the sun comes out and he starts playing really well. So
FPL Tractor says, Mum lost an hour of Mother's Day yesterday because of the clock changes that happened in certain parts of the world. We had the clock change here, you had a clock change. If you could lose any hour of this season, which hour would it be? I'm going to take the first half against Arsenal, where we conceded like 5 goals in 45 minutes of football.
Just 1 hour.
Yeah, I'm taking that first half against Arsenal.
I need to take out about 20 hours. Worst hour of the lot. My goodness. There's been so many shit ones, Suj. I don't know what to pinpoint one particular hour, actually. Maybe Palace away, because I hate Selhurst Park. Sorry, Eagles fans. We were shit. They deserved to win, no question. Maybe that was passive crap. Maybe that one, Palace away. Even though there's probably been worse ones, but yeah, I'd maybe pick up that one. Well, I'll tell you what, here's a good one. When I got the coach to Everton, I take the hour out before I got the coach. So I couldn't have got the coach.
That was a long way to go to see yourselves play particularly badly. Right, a question from Wolf. It's from Drew. The best way to maximize a wildcard 30 if you have no other chips left?
So balance. So you cannot go too heavy to the 33 doublers. There's no point setting there and going, I'm going to, if they double, and of course, again, timestamp, this is Monday morning. You can't go with like 9 doublers, 33, and then go blank 34 if you can't get away from that. So you've got to be a little bit more selective. Now, because Palace double, you're going to do that. Get yourself definitely a goalkeeper who's got double in 33 and one that's going to play in 34. Something like we've just used an example. But you might want to go, actually, yeah, no, sorry, I'm going to go like Kepa. It's definitely going to play in 34. It's a bit cheaper. And go like Henderson, so maybe you're not spending so much on your keepers. So you can't go too heavy. I don't think you can go more than sort of like 5, 6 doublers, 33. You're just going to leave yourself too much of a headache, 34. And I also think 34, as I said, fixtures are still good for the majority of teams in 34. This is not like one of them. There's certain weeks you go, I'd be happy with 8, 9 players because the fixture's a bit shit anyway. Like if you free hit in 34, you will put a good team together. I'm absolutely certain of that. So there's danger. There's danger in that week. So I don't think you can overcommit. Use teams who've got a good balance of fixtures. You also need to factor in the end. So I think Forest, Brentford, Everton for rotation, maybe even a bit of West Ham should all be considered as longer term moves where you're going to have maybe enablers from those teams because it'll be quite useful for you at the end. I look at things like Everton playing Ipswich at home in 35, 37. I think, right, if I can find something that's quite decent for 36 and 38, like Bournemouth playing Villa and Leicester at home, and in those 2 weeks, Everton at home and Bournemouth have got Arsenal and Man City away, that's on how it currently looks. I'd be thinking, right, so something like a Kirkes and Mikalenko, or you might even want to save more money and go like Haaland and Mikalenko. And I go, that's me sorted for the end. I could pick up a real problem here. And I know I've got one of these guys going to cover me nice in like each week, for example. I'd be looking at little things like that. If you're looking that far ahead for what you've got, you have to go for balance. You can't steam into anything too hard. You've got to look at balance. You'd go, right, in 32, I've got Newcastle doublers, and you go on 33, shit. But they've got Ipswich at home in 34 where you'd want to go back to 3. So I probably would go like 3 Newcastle, and I'd just have to suffer 33 away to Villa and not be thinking, oh, I'm going to take Isak out for someone who's got a double. You suffer it. It's just Villa away, keep going through. You've got to have balance.
Good, and that's a good message to end the pod in. So get yourselves planning. If you are thinking about how to figure out what your team looks like in future weeks, we do recommend FPL.team. If you are a patron, you get it included as part of your Patreon subscription or membership. You get the premium version of FPL Team where you can save your team and tinker away to your heart's content.
Remember, you can move the projections yourself. So if you disagree, you think Forest Brentford will go on the Thursday in game week 33, you can go onto FPL team and move the fixture and put it there. If you so desire, you can play around and move Palace Wolves from 37 at the end. If you want to play around with those sort of things on FPL team, you can. You just click on it and choose the week that you want to move any given fixture to. So it enables you that as great capacity. I use that a lot as well, that particular feature.
Lovely jubbly. James, what do the listeners have to look forward to for the rest of the week before we wrap this episode?
I think bar correspondent week, this is probably the biggest FPL week of content all season, I think, for us. So as I said earlier, me and Clates we're going to try and keep them short. I know we talk too much, but we're going to look specifically tomorrow at different options for Wildcard 30. And then we'll do the same on Friday, looking at Wildcard 31 options. I will probably, by the way, bring free hit drafts as well to help with who should I take my 1 week punt on. That should maybe help with that as well. Clayton and I will be doing the Clayton and James show Wednesday. Thursday, me and the boss here will be doing the game review podcast. We'll also cover off Chelsea Tottenham on the Friday podcast as well. I'll be at Stamford Bridge Thursday night. As Suj said, if you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl, and it is stacked this week. Q&A today. Game week previews for differential show on Tuesday and Friday. Wednesday is Tottenham. Thursday, I'm doing Ask James for patrons. That's available from basic tier plus as well on Thursday afternoon. There's additional advanced tier content as well, includes midweek dilemma on Wednesday, Nico's Corner today, team news streams on Tuesday late afternoon, and on Friday late afternoon as well, and of course available to everybody on YouTube. Deadline streams tomorrow night 5:15 UK time and 10 a.m. Saturday morning as well. It's stacked this week with FPL content because we ain't spoke about it for 2 weeks.
3 nearly, almost.
I can tell you Clash of Correspondence, if you didn't know as well, next week is Newcastle Palace with Simon Bibby and Rory McLaughlin-Dowd ahead of game week 32.
Of course, before the double. Makes sense. Good. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the show. You know what to do wherever you're listening. Hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, hit the notification bell, hit whatever it does that gets you notified as soon as any other content goes live. And if you want to leave us a review, that would also be lovely as well. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you may be listening. Other than that, though, I can feel the steam already coming out of people's ears, James. So stay safe, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Get it posted before these projections go wrong, eh? Be nice to each other, everyone. Play it your way. Cue music, please. Man child.